What the fuck? What is up, gamers? In this video, I'll be going over a bunch of budget options you can use for really expensive cards in Standard. A lot of these cards have gotten to Yu-Gi-Oh level prices, and not everyone is trying to play the most optimal build. They just want to have fun with their deck. So here's a list of budget options for expensive cards. We will start with Forktail. So Forktail is on call. You look at the top 7 cards of your deck and put either a stealth unit or a glitter unit into your soul and then shuffle the rest back. If you're looking to get specific stealth or glitter units into your soul, a nice budget option is Tsumugi. So Tsumugi is when placed on rearguard, you Soul Blast 1 and put a normal unit with stealth or glitter from your drop zone into your soul. This lets you filter into specific units you want in your soul. If you're just using Forktail for the extra soul, then Togachi Garashi is also a good alternative. Whenever it's discarded from your hand during your turn, it goes into soul. So it is a stealth unit for the decks that normally play Forktail, but it also is a generic way to give you extra soul. Next up is the face of expensive right now, which is Brainwash Spoiler. On play on the rearguard, you soul charge 1, and every time you soul charge, he gets plus 5k power. Naturally becomes a 13k beater, and also helps set up your soul. So some alternatives for specifically Drajuled, Fergris is a great, because Fergris just helps set up your soul for specific grades easier. And for specifically Battle Magnus, there's Gomon, where it gives you a 2-card Garter Strat for the rest of your turn after Battle Magnus sucks it in the soul. And then for some generic options, there is Gungan Ram, where it has the same effect of whenever it's placed on rearguard, soul charge 1. So this is a really nice budget alternative compared to Brainwash for Chrono Jet specifically, because Jet mainly uses Brainwash for the extra soul charge so they can use GG more often. There's also Ling from the Drajul Child deck. You look at top 2 and put one to soul and the other on bottom. So for decks that want to find specific things in their soul, Ling is really good. There's also Shenna. Whenever it's placed on rearguard from your hand, you put one of your rearguards in the soul, look at the top card, and either call it or put it in the soul. And then lastly, Mikanis. So the grade 1 Mikani that's coming out in set 8 has the skill of on place on rearguard, you soul charge 1, and also you can put in the soul and call the grade 3 Mikani from your soul. And the grade 3 Mikani has the skill of on call, you Cow Blast 1, Soul Blast 1, and then you retire an opponent's rearguard depending on the grade of the card you Soul Blasted. Next up is Falcate. So whenever Falcate boosts, you put a card with a grade from your drop zone into your soul if you don't have that grade in your soul already. So again, Fergris is a great option for Drajuled. It basically does the same thing, except it's on play, and you replace one of your souls, you don't gain a soul off of it. And then there's also Ling again, where you want to put cards from your deck into your soul. There's also Model Bara. When placed on rearguard, you Cow Blast 1, put a card from your drop into your soul. If you have 4 more different grades, he gets plus 10. So it can potentially be a 20k beater, and if your deck doesn't eat up a ton of counterblasts, then this becomes a viable option. And unlike Fergris, you don't lose out on a soul from it. You actually still gain a soul. So this is also a very nice option. And then Lukier also plays Falcate for next set. So a cool option you can use in there is Desire Devil Zito. So when Zito is put from rearguard into your soul by your Vanguard's ability, you put a card from your drop into your soul. So Lukier is able to put cards from the field into her soul at the end of the turn. If you used her order that turn, then at the end of the turn, you can have Zito on rearguard and then have Lukier suck it up. And then you can put the order back into your soul to set up for next turn. And then if you also have lost pieces due to like retire effects or having to discard for riding up, then Zito's able to grab them back. Next, we will move to Combine Russia. For the decks that play Combine Russia in the ride deck, which would be Gravidia and Orphis, you can just run Cubicia again. You end up having a stronger grade 2 turn while losing out on having a guaranteed Combine Russia later on. There's also Tectian. Usually, Combine Rusher is a pretty decent discard target because you're able to revive it through its own effect. So Tectian fills that role of being able to be discarded early on, and then you get value out of it because Tectean gives you a set order from your deck. So if you rely very heavily on seeing specific set orders at specific times, then Tectean is a good option. For specifically heroes, you can run more Clostons in your main deck, where instead of it being a 20k beater that can keep reviving, it's a 15k beater. Also gets all the bonuses from being a hero. So you can search it off of your base, and Dianos gives it power itself. And then if you're running Combine Rusher specifically for the power, you can run Successor of the Variables Star instead if you're playing a deck that stacks up a bunch of orders, so like Orphist and Ava, because it gets plus 2k for each set order in your order zone. So this can very quickly become a 13k, 15k beater, and it can also boost other rear guards. Next up is Bubble Mine. So at end of battle that boosted, if you have a set order, you put in the soul and countercharge 1. So specifically Gravidia and Ava play this card, and Welsha will be playing it after set 9's release. For Gravidia specifically, you can use Gravidia or Garail. So it's a grade 1 with the rearguard skill on attack or boost. If you have 3 or more meteors, you can Soul Blast 2, countercharge 1, and she gets plus 5k until end of turn. So Gravidia doesn't have any struggles with getting soul because all the meteors other than the grade 2 ones can soul charge, and this is also just a very solid 13k beater that also countercharges on attack. And then for some generic ones, Mega Grago. So when the attack that it boosted hits, you countercharge 1. It's reliant on your opponent to take the hit, put this behind really big attacks to where you either countercharge or they drop a ton of shield to block the attack. And then there's also Ravenous Monster Marunorm. So if you're playing a deck that has a ton of excess orders in their hand, so like Gravidia, you can use Marunorm to discard your extra set orders to either bring back from other effects or get bonuses elsewhere, and then this will countercharge you 1. Next for Stoicheia is Inlet Pulse. So Inlet Pulse gone up astronomically in price because of the unrestriction. So some ideas you can use for specifically Flagbug, you can put in more of the grade 2 restanders between Ascendance Assault and Eric's. Usually in most builds, you'll have one of the two in there, but you won't have both. So putting in more of the other one that you don't have is a fine solution. For specifically Roara, you're able to play the new full-blown dragon. So at the end of your turn, if your Vanguard's a glitter, you can put in the soul and call 2 tokens out. So this is honestly better for the deck than Inlet Pulse because Roara is able to use those tokens defensively on the opponent's next turn or offensively on your next turn. And then it also gives the deck soul, which is desperately needed. And then for Maelstrom, there is Shoreline Raised Dragon. So on attack, if it's the 4th battle of the turn or more, if your order zone has a Blue Storm Fleet card, then he gets plus 10k power until end of battle and goes into soul. This is a tier dragon that Maelstrom can consistently call out and also be a 23k beater. And then it goes back in the soul to be able to come back out again. And then for some generic options, there is Roaming Prison Dragon. If your deck is playing a ton of orders, then playing Roaming Prison Dragon can be a good way to take advantage of those orders by giving you a stronger early game, since you can discard them during your ride phase and then play an order and then revive them back as 15k beaters. And then another similar option to that is Rotting Usurp Dragon. So if your deck relies on riding grade 4 or Persona riding, then riding Usurp Dragon is really nice on being able to keep calling out a rearguard every single turn. And then the more you have, you can just call out a full field out of nowhere. If you are playing Inlet Pulse for the soul charge that it provides, then a couple great options. Soul Revolution. So at end of the turn, if you Alchemagicked or attacked 5 or more times, you can put in the soul and countercharge 1. And then there's also Prize Trident, where on your 5th attack, you can put in the soul and countercharge 1. So these are just really good resource management cards where you're able to get a soul and countercharge. Next up is Diantha. So when Diantha is called, you can Counterblast 1 and call a grade 3 or less card from your drop zone. And it's also a 13k beater. You can play either Condensation or Frozen Resentment, since they are both a Soul Blast to revive something from your drop zone. There's also Elenia, where it functions mostly the same way, where it's a unit that can revive something. It can only revive grade 2 or less though, but it gives it 5k power. So if your deck isn't super reliant on grade 3s, then Elenia is a great option. And then there's also Aerosera. So when placed on rearguard from your hand, if your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, you can Counter Blast 1, Soul Blast 1, mill the top 3 cards of your deck, choose a card from your drop, and if it's a grade 2 or less, you call it, and then if it's the same name as your Vanguard, add it to hand instead. Aerosera can help give you Persona Ride each turn, or generate extra bodies onto the field. And then again, there's Roaming Prison Dragon and Rotting Usopp Dragon. Next up, we have Melty. So Melty has the friend effect, and also when placed on rearguard during your main phase, you can Counter Blast 1, call another rearguard from your hand, and then draw a card. So if you're playing a big friend package in your deck, you could play Ducala also. So on rearguard once per turn, when your unit with the friend ability is placed in the same column as it, if you have 3 or more other friends, then you can Counter Blast 1 and draw a card. It's just a different way of being able to draw a card off of you playing rearguards down. And then it's also a grade 1, so you can change your grade 2 lineup differently to where it can have bigger beaters, like this next card. Instead of going the draw route, you could do the more aggressive route. So there's Menia, which has the friend ability, and then on rearguard during your turn, if you have other friends, this unit gets plus 5k. So it becomes a 13k beater, and you're able to play aggressively with it early on by putting an 8k behind it to swing for 21. And you're able to just push a little harder than Melty could normally. And then next is Yuika. Yuika is pretty difficult to find a replacement for it because nothing does what it does. For Kairi specifically, you can play favorite one, Fluretti. When your other rearguard is returned to your hand by a grade 3 or greater Vanguard's ability, you can Counter Blast 1 and put in the soul, draw a card, and then call a grade 3 from your hand to an open rearguard. Kairi is able to bounce your units back into your hand, so Fluretti basically extends how big of a power play they can make by calling more things during the turn and giving them more power. And then for every other build, you're not going to find a replacement for bouncing things back to your hand unless it's archetype specific. So power wise, there's again Menia, there is Larissa, and there's also Iveta. So these are pretty good generic beaters that any deck could play as long as you have a friend engine. And that is it. Thank you all for watching. Hopefully this makes playing in standard a little bit more helpful. And yeah, see you guys in the next one.